Hello and welcome to World Turtles. After a few very busy months, during which I did a bunch of game dev related things for the first time in my life, I was able to release the trailer and demo for my very first game just over a week ago. Check out the links in the description if you haven't seen these yet. But today we're here to have a look at how the game plays and what to keep in mind when playing. So let's jump straight into a randomly generated map. Oh, our finder's eggs have spawned quite close to the edge of the map, right by the turtle's head. In fact, let me go into the camera mode that actually shows you how the map moves in space with the turtle. So, while in this demo we won't be interacting with the turtle yet, the technical stuff is in place to eventually make it part of the game and not just an ornament. We can even play in this camera mode if we wanted to, but let's return to some stability for now. Our Founder's Hex provides us with temporary lodgings and provisions for our starting units. I've given us some extra Meeps and resources for this playthrough so that we can progress a little faster. So we've got 8 idle Meeps and 10 builders to kick things off. Here in the top left we can see our idle Meeps, buildings and available resources. And in the top right we have a breakdown of our employed Meeps as well as remaining capacity and progress in various spheres of influence. But more on that later. We need to start constructing buildings. Let's start off with a Wanderer's Cabin to explore our surroundings. We'll place it here close to the edge of our territory. You can see that only a few of the builders start heading off to construct the cabin. There's a reason why in this case only 3 builders head off. While we'll see later that many more can work together on a building. Since there won't be armies and battle in World Turtles, a lot of the action will be focusing on the world itself. The first factor on this list is how buildings are placed. Each building takes up a ring of hexes rather than a single hex. Not all 7 hexes in this area needs to be on the same elevation level. Each floor plan allows certain variability in the ground level, and the builders can raise or lower the existing elevation by 1 level. There's a recursive methodology that figures out the optimal rotation of the floor plan that requires the least amount of groundwork to construct the building. That's why you'll see the building spin around when trying out different locations. By holding the control key you can force a certain rotation, but it may be suboptimal. Where the floor plan is highlighted green, it means the elevation level of that hex doesn't have to be altered, while yellow means the builders will have some extra work to level the terrain, which increases building time. We've got some idle builders, so let's start building some cabins for resource gatherers. We can place a woodcutter's cabin here, close to the trees, again on a green floor plan. Next we can place a stonemason's cabin in between the rocks over here. Note how the terrain slopes up to the south. It will most likely become difficult to construct buildings more towards the south, due to the elevation levels differing too drastically. But we have plenty of flat land around our Founder's Hex for farms, which take up a lot more space. We'll have to expand to the east and west to get around the mountain to the south. Our Wanderer's Cabin has now been occupied, so let's tell them to explore the mountain area. Also, note that we can now construct farms, so let's give our builders some more work. We can place the farm in the large flat area over here. Let's see how the woodcutters and stonemasons cabins are doing. The woodcutter's cabin has been completed and 2 Meeps are heading over there, while the stonemason's cabin is almost done. For the woodcutter's cabin, we can select the priorities between chopping down trees and planting trees. We can also select a specific area if we want them to focus on a particular spot on the map. For example, you may want to clear out some trees quickly to make space for a building. Now, we currently have some more idle Meeps. So let's construct a builder's yard here on the edge of our territory to see what it does. Let's also construct some more resource gatherers. Our wanderers have explored enough of the mountain for now, so let's send them to some unexplored border area. Note that you can also have a cinematic camera follow specific Meeps around for a close-up look of the world. You may have noticed that the sounds are attenuated so you hear more loudly whatever is happening closer to the camera's focal point. In this mode, you can hear the little footsteps and other sounds a bit clearer, if there aren't any waterfalls or rivers nearby, drowning them out. Another interesting camera view is the old school orthographic view, which basically takes away the camera's perspective, so things in the distance are the same size on screen as things close by. Some people like this view, so I've added it as an option. There are some more game options like displaying the map grid to clearly show the individual hexes, but let's get back to the game for now. We've now come to a point where we are not attracting any more idle Meeps. Let's have a look at the other two UI panels to see why. Firstly, the stockpiles are pretty straightforward, showing you how much resources you have, with green numbers appearing at the top as we gather more, while red numbers show our expenditure. The rest of these hexes are for buildings, which we'll look at a bit later. On the top right panel, we see our currently employed Meeps and their skill levels. In this demo, these are randomly assigned, but they will eventually have to be earned. A part of the upskilling mechanic is already present in the demo. When we open up a building, we can see that the frame of each task is dynamic. As the Meeps perform a task, they gain experience in that task, which is indicated by the frames starting off red and becoming green as it goes all the way around, by which time the unit will be viable for an upgrade. But only once the Alchemist and Tinkerer, two buildings I'm working on, have supplied them with better tools. But back to the top right panel. The second row of hexes is the important one here. It shows our excess capacity in terms of dwellings, food supply, order and appeal. The green numbers indicate current excess capacity, while the red numbers indicate capacity under construction. For example, each of the ordered buildings adds 2 capacity to the dwellings, while the farm adds 8 food supply. The problem is that our order and appeal capacities have no excess left. We need a way to increase these. As soon as a farm is occupied, we unlock the research hub and the leisure hub. They increase order and appeal, so let's plop them down immediately. They are area of effect buildings, so we need to place them nicely in between our other buildings to grant access to them. There we go. But our builders are still quite busy, so these will take a while before they are completed. Let's take the opportunity to have a look at these other UI hexes in the top left. As our number of buildings keeps increasing, there will be a need to keep track of everything. Each hex represents one building type and can be expanded into the 3 skill levels. You can now see how many buildings of each skill level you have, both completed buildings and ones under construction. You can also left and right click on any of these to scroll through them on the map. Finally, you can right click on the main hexes to turn hex highlights on and off on the map. Some of these can be active simultaneously, for example woodcutters and stonemasons cabins, while others need to deactivate existing ones first to not clutter up the map with indistinguishable highlights. These make our empire easier to manage as it expands. Speaking of expanding, we see that the builder's yard have been completed, and these border flags indicating the territory on which we can construct buildings have now moved out a fair bit. We now have more land to develop. Note that when the builder's yard was ordered, it earmarked 2 idle Meeps for the building. However, since our original 10 builders are still homeless, 2 of them gets preference to occupy the yard, and the original Meeps become idle again, and we can use them for another purpose. This also means we can construct a few builders' yards at this point to expand our territory right when it becomes necessary. This will greatly increase our excess dwellings capacity when the builders' yards are completed. And now that we can also increase our order and appeal capacity by ordering more research hubs and leisure hubs to cover our expanding territory, the time is right for the rapid population growth. All these Meeps will come in handy when our second tier of buildings and tasks come into play. However, the demo only covers up to the 2 hubs, which now also appears as tasks for most of the building types. Let's strongly prioritize these 2 to see how they work. Meeps will get together at the research hub to discuss their trade and learn from each other. eventually knowing enough to level up. But they also need to have enough spare time for leisure, or they will be unhappy and unproductive. Keep them happy and they will eventually have children, a long-term commitment to more Meeps joining the workforce. But let's end the video here for now. We've covered just about everything the demo has to offer, except that we can of course expand our territory and turn our sprawling realm into a powerhouse of resource gathering for the next stage of the journey. Please consider subscribing to be a part of the journey. Check out the trailer and wishlist World Turtles on Steam if you liked what you saw today. Goodbye!